Hi everyone. In this lesson we're going to cut some cracks into the concrete over here, and we're going to create some grass with V-Ray fur. So let's get started. Let's just hide the building for now since we won't need this. And then switch to our top view, turn on the wireframe, and turn on X-ray. Now the first thing you're going to want to do is draw out a curve for the area we want to cut. So I want to cut some cracks just along this edge here and in front of the stairs. So I've already drawn out some curves. But if you want to do this, just select your curve tool. Make sure the degree is set to 1 linear. And then you can just draw out some kind of shape. Make sure it's coming across this line here, because we're only going to cut out this front portion. I'm just going to delete this. So once you've drawn out your curves, we're going to just extract these faces just to make it a little bit easier and so we don't run into too many issues. So just extract these. And then to actually cut this face with this curve, we need to first select the curve, then Shift select that piece of geometry, then go up to Edit Mesh and click Project Curve on Mesh. And then once you've done that, you'll see you should have this projection curve. And then with that selected, Shift select that same piece of geometry again, go back to Edit Mesh, and then click Split Mesh with Projected Curve. And if everything works correctly, that should now be split into 2 pieces. And we'll do the same thing with this curve here. There we go, and then with this one as well. And sometimes you might run into an issue where it doesn't actually work. So usually if you select that original curve and just try moving it around a little bit, and it'll find a place that it likes, and then it will work. And just go ahead and delete the history on everything once you're finished with that. Okay, so now we can turn off this X-ray. I'm just going to separate all of these, and then I'm going to select all these cut pieces and combine them into one object. And I'm just going to hide all of these curves, and then I'm going to extrude this down a little bit, not too much, and then just delete the top faces. Okay, so that's that'll work for these cuts. So now we want to add some grass into these areas. So to do that, we're going to use the V-Ray fur, and that needs to be applied to a surface. So let's select all these bottom faces, and we're going to duplicate them. So we just duplicate these faces, and I'm going to pull them up just a little bit. Okay. And then I'm going to combine all of these. Okay. So I'm just going to name this V-Ray grass faces. Alright, so then with this selected, we'll go up to Create, go down to V-Ray, and then go to V-Ray Fur, and then click Add V-Ray Fur to Selection. And then you'll see this little preview of the grass, or the fur. If you go into your attribute editor, and make sure you go over to the V-Ray grass properties, or the V-Ray fur properties, you can start adjusting some of these things. And I'm going to set this to something like 50. And this can be left alone. Change the bend down to 0.3. And give it some more length of variance, like 0.8. And a little bit more gravity variance of 0.5. And then one important thing is this last option. This is the distribution of the V-Ray fur. And if it's set to per face, it's going to be distributed the same amount per face of geometry. I like to switch this to per area. That way you'll get a uniform distribution over everything, regardless of what your modeling geometry looks like or what your subdivisions look like. So the way this V-Ray fur works is there's not a separate material that you can apply to this. It basically takes on the material of this underlying piece of geometry. So with this selected, I've already created this grass material that I'll use. It's just it's a V-Ray two-sided material, just to give it some of that translucency. And the base material is just a simple V-Ray material, just with a greenish diffuse color and some, semi-glossy reflections. So select that base piece of geometry and then apply that material. So let's do a quick render of this and see how it looks. Okay, so this is how it's looking. It's looking pretty good, but it's looking a little bit unnaturally even in height. So we can take care of that with a black and white map. You have the option in here in the V-Ray fur properties to use different texture maps to adjust some of these things. So we'll make a black and white map and put it into the length texture here. So to do that, the first thing we need to do is just make sure all these are UV mapped. So we'll just do automatic mapping on them. And then open up your UV texture editor. And then in your UV texture editor, you can go up to subdivs and go to UV snapshot. Click on that. You can choose where you want to save it out to. I think this size will be fine. You can set the image format to JPEG and click OK. And what that will do is we'll save this out. So basically you can just bring this into Photoshop and you can start painting sort of black and white values for where you want to affect the height. And I have already done that. So this is what I've done. So just painting black and white. And I'm going to add this to my scene. Drop that in there. Select this and drag this into the length texture slot. Okay. And now if we were to render this again, we should get something that looks a little bit more realistic. So that's basically how I like to make my grass using V-Ray fur. I think it's pretty quick and it looks pretty good. And that should be it for all of the modeling and texturing and materials. So basically all that's left is rendering out the final scene. So in the next lesson I'll go through the final render settings and talk a little bit about all the different render passes that I like to render out.